receives a religious call to be a pastor or a priest. We need to realize that people are actually called to their careers, to the things that God has created them to do. In the real world, some people are called to be nurses, some teachers, some accountants, some lawyers, some mothers and fathers. So today we find that Ruth is called to be a caretaker for Naomi, to accompany Naomi back on her journey home. The fact that we can be called to God to something other than a religious calling should be no surprise to us, because God creates each of us very differently, with different skills and attitudes and emotions. So how could He call us all to the same call? The second thing we learn from Ruth's journey is that God can work through tragedy. No matter what that tragedy is, even though we can't explain the tragedy, God is there and God's working. Finally, then, the third thing that we can learn from the story of Ruth is about God's plan to include all of us, no matter how broken we are, in His plan for salvation. First, let's consider Ruth's call from God. What does it mean to be called by God? Does God call only pastors to do His work? Does God call everyone to do different things? I think the answer to that question is very easy. We're all so very different. You look around and you see different calls. Even in yesterday's benefit, you saw people called to do different things. Some are called to stir eggs. Some were called to serve the food. And that's not because the job was open. That's what they normally go to do. Some people were called to greet. Everyone has a different calling. This week I spent time with a lot of people in very different situations, and I learned that these people have calls. Take Jay Vostek, for example. Is there any doubt that Jay was called to be a funeral director? If you spend any time with him, you see the care he gives to families and the care he gives to the body of our beloved. Jay was definitely called by God. The way he treats people and cares for people. Or hospice nurses. All summer I've spent every Tuesday in Bland-Beckendall Hospice, and I saw the care that those nurses give not only to the patients that are in their care at the hospice, but also at their homes as they visit and take care of people and give them exercises, make sure they get their medications, train them, and also how they take care of the families of the people in hospice. They don't just take care of the client, they take care of the families. They make sure they have everything they need. And not only nursing care, food, spiritual care, social work. I saw them track down wedding certificates so people can get Social Security benefits. They do everything. Those people are called. And then a dentist. That's definitely a call. Could you stick your hands in someone else's mouth? I know I couldn't. That's a call. God creates people with certain things that they need to do. Our dentist thought she was called to be a physical therapist. She flunked out 3 times before she finally said, all right, I get it. You called me to be a dentist. And she's a really good dentist. She's really good. So God calls people to do different things. He doesn't just call them to be pastors. He calls them to do what He's created them to do. On the internet, I found a really good explanation of what it means to be called. It comes from Donald Miller. And Donald Miller, he's a business consultant, but he wrote one of my favorite spiritual books of all time. It's called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, How I Learned to Live a Better Story. It's about how he found God and how he wrote a different life story for himself. This book, it tells you don't have to live the life you were born into, or you don't have to live the life that you're in right now. You can change it, and God helps you out with that. So here's this 2-part explanation for what a call means. Being called by God is about laying down your life, doing small, secret things. It doesn't have to be a grand project. It can be something small. And then when you do it, don't run off and say, look what I did. We had so many people working on the benefit for Easton that came off yesterday. None of them went to the newspaper and said, look what we're doing. But still, it was on the radio all the time. It was in the newspapers. People saw it. We received contributions from where?
Lake Geneva.
Lake Geneva. Because they heard about it. Nobody broadcast it. They just went out there and did it. The second explanation, to feel called by God is to serve God by loving people. Jesus only gave us 2 commands. He said, love God with everything you have. Your heart, your mind, your soul, your body, everything He's given you. And love everybody as you love yourself. So that's a 2-part definition. So when we look at that definition, we can see that Ruth has been called. She laid down her life. Because in the times that Naomi and Ruth lived in, if you didn't have a husband, you had nothing. Because women weren't allowed to own anything. They couldn't have jobs. So these 3 women looked like they were going to starve to death. And then by going to Bethlehem with Naomi, she's going into enemy territory. The Israelis were told not to deal with Moabites, not to deal with anybody outside their religion. And it was in their law. In Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 3 through 6, it says, no Ammonite or Moabite or any of their descendants may enter the assembly of the Lord. They couldn't even come close to the temple. Not even in the 10th generation. For 10 generations, they couldn't come in there. So if you had relatives who were Moabites going back 10 generations, you couldn't come in. It goes on further. Do not seek a treaty of friendship with them as long as you live. Couldn't be friends. So here's Ruth going into Bethlehem with Naomi. The law tells the Israelites, you can't even associate with this woman. So how's she going to find a husband if nobody can even be a friend with her? She's laying down her life. The second thing we learn from Ruth's journey is that God can and does work through tragedy. God doesn't create tragedies. God didn't create evil. Everything that God has created is good. But tragedy still exists. We can't explain it. We don't know why things happen. We don't know why Easton has something called spinal fluid cancer, and at any time cancer could go through his body. We have no idea. But it happens. The story of Ruth begins in the tragedy of dislocation and death. They had to leave their home in Bethlehem because there was no food. So they went to Moab, a place of their enemies, just to eat and survive. And then all the guys died. Husband, 2 sons. 3 widows in an ancient world where being a widow was kind of like a death sentence. And Naomi thinks that God did this to her. In verses 20 and 21, she tells her friends, call me Mara. Now, Naomi means pleasant in Hebrew. But nothing about Naomi's life right now is pleasant. So she says, call me Mara, and that means bitter in Hebrew. Because the Lord has dealt bitterly with me. She blames God for what's happened. And when a family suffers so much, we wonder, how does this happen? Why does this happen? How much can a family endure? When death hits a family like it does to Naomi, Orpha, and Ruth, we're faced with that big question, why? Why does this happen? You know, and the last thing people want to hear when something bad happens, they don't want to hear everything happens for a reason. Because you're wondering, all right, so what's the reason? What good is going to come of this? Or God meant to teach us something. What can I learn by getting another disease? What can I learn? Or maybe, this is a real good one of my favorites, God needed another fill-in-the-blank in heaven. When a little baby dies, God doesn't need another baby in heaven. He's got plenty. So we got all this tragedy, and we're trying to figure out, why does this happen? We can't explain it. We have no idea. And even the Christian doctrine of providence, it tries to explain tragedy and evil and why it happens. And the best it can do is to come up with the two different types of evil. Natural evil, which is like tornadoes and floods and earthquakes, things that we can't stop, we can't explain, but they happen anyway. And they happen because we live in the world that God created, and there's just certain laws that happen. Earthquakes happen. And when we're here, it happens. The other thing is moral evil, and that's the evil that people do to other people. Like the Nazis did to the Jews, or ISIS is doing now, or you think of racism. And that's caused by people's sins. Still no explanation, but that's it. So evil comes from sin, but evil doesn't come upon us because we sin. So once again, we still don't have an explanation. So I promised myself when I get out of seminary in December, I'm going to study this so I can at least help people who are going through this. But there's a different way we can look at things. When a tragedy comes upon us, instead of saying, why me, we can say, how is God present? Or, how is God acting here? When we do that, it kind of changes our focus. Yesterday at the benefit, we don't know why Easton has spinal fluid cancer. We don't have a clue. But how is God present? God was present by those companies donating everything we needed. So there was no expense. Every dollar that was generated by contributions went to Easton's family. And then how is God acting here? In that tragedy, we looked at Easton. His smile was so big, bigger than a 3-year-old body could hold. And he's smiling and bringing love to everybody. And then people just kept on coming. We're cooking, and people are coming and coming and coming, and more eggs are going in the pan, and cooking and cooking and cooking, and more people come. So that's how God was acting here. For Ruth and Naomi, how is God present in the tragedy of Naomi, orphan Ruth? In the support that Ruth gives to Naomi. She laid aside her life for Naomi. She did the little things. And she didn't broadcast them. She went with Naomi. How is God acting here? By calling Ruth to be Naomi's caretaker, that's how God was acting. Ruth was going to an uncertain life, but she went anyway, because that's what God called her to do. So through their relationships, the women began to break the bondage of tragedy, and they went into a new life of abundance. We know how the story of Ruth ended, and if you don't, read the last couple chapters, but it's good. Ruth finds a husband who's very well off. And then Ruth has a child of her own. So she has a husband and a child. And what did Ruth do to Naomi when she had everything? When she had a husband and child? Where did Ruth leave Naomi? That you have to read for yourself. I'm not going to spoil it for you. So finally, what's the last thing we can learn from the story of Ruth? It's that God has a plan for everybody's life, and that we can all help out in salvation. Even broken and sinful people can help out. And then we ask, well, why is the story of Ruth even in the Bible? She's not Jewish. She's not a prophet. Why is this Moabite woman, who Deuteronomy tells me that we can't even associate, we can't even know, why is she in the Bible? Why do we have to read about her? And our answer comes in Matthew chapter 1, verse 5, in the genealogy of Jesus. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, another non-Jewish woman. Boaz, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Obed, the father of Jesse. Jesus was of the root of Jesse. Obed, Ruth's son, was the father of Jesse. Ruth is in the Bible because Ruth just happens to be Jesus' maybe great-great-grandmother. And that's why she's in the Bible.